Professor Moshe Idel, Professor Emeritus at Hebrew University, Senior Lecturer at the Hartman Institute, and really one of the most impressive scholars in the area of Jewish mysticism today. Thank you so much for joining us. So what would you say is Jewish mysticism?
Jewish mysticism is one form of Judaism which emerged rather early, meaning at the end of the Second Temple, and took different forms. So it's very difficult to define in a simple way Jewish mysticism because it was transformed many times in different environments up to modern Hasidism and various forms of Kabbala. So we should pay attention to each school in each period, which is rather different from the others. In a simple way, I would say that it's a way of accelerating Jewish life, but accelerating in different ways in different periods.
So what made you so interested in this area? What made you interested in this school of thought and Jewish mysticism?
Difficult, to answer the question. I started as someone who was supposed to write a PhD in Jewish philosophy, and doesn't matter how I became involved in the manuscripts of Kabbala. So it was a lot of curiosity to see such a vast camp of unknown material, and that's what attracted my curiosity. Simply, I've seen a lot of unknown material, different from various periods, and that was a matter of curiosity more than anything else.
So you followed your curiosity when you were exposed
Yes.
to this? And
I studied a lot of manuscripts, not just for writing a PhD, but out of curiosity to see something unknown.
in an ideal world, would all Jews be mystics? Would they all learn this material?
No, I would say it's better to have a diversity rather than one form of Jewish life. Jewish life survived, the Jews survived because they adapted themselves to different environments. And I would prefer to have a very variegated type of Jewish life which will survive different challenges, to put it so.
God is a very complicated concept. What do you think of when you think of God?
To tell you the truth, I don't think too much about God. Meaning I don't deny an existence, I don't prove it. I am, to a certain extent, agnostic, but assuming that possibility also there is such a power named God.
When you study so much about God, does it not, and you have the curiosity to want to go deeper, does it not interest you to want to think more about it?
Yes, I will be curious, but it's up to him to solve my curiosity. If I would have a revelation I never had, for sure it would be interesting, but unfortunately I didn't have any revelation so far.
So far. What is the purpose of the Jewish people?
To survive as a Jewish people. I don't assume a theological or teleological vision. The Jews are supposed to serve something. In my opinion, it's important to have a certain form of life, certain attitude to the world, which is informed by Jewish concepts, but not in order to be the light for the nations or to bring redemption to the world.
So you don't think that is necessarily the aim of the Jewish people?
It never was.
So,
not only, it never, the Jews, most of the Jews, 99% never thought about such a question and didn't live in such a way.
But doesn't the Torah say to be a mamlechet kohanim begoy kadosh, to be a kingdom of priests and holy nation?
You're right. But people live according to what they believe it can be done, and not in accordance to what was written in a certain ancient scripture.
So, according to this, what you study, the Kabbala, how does prayer work?
How?
How does tefillah, prayer, how does it work?
There are varieties of understanding of prayer in Kabbalah. The assumption is, for some Kabbalists, that while someone prays, she may intend to a variety of divine powers in order to have an impact on them. So people understood the prayer as a system of symbols which may have an effect on the divine world. So that was the prevalent, dominant vision of prayer in Kabbalah. But there are also other forms of understanding prayer in Kabbalah. For example, to bring down divine powers during the prayer, to bring them down in order to use them, in order to use the power, which is a little bit more magical. And in Hasidus, you can have prayer as a form of union with God. Those are totally different visions, and all of them survived.
Your PhD was in the area of Abulafia.
Yes.
That approach to prayer is more connected to the more mystical, magical bringing down. How do you relate to that?
Abulafia doesn't speak too much about prayer because he doesn't see prayer as the highest form of religious life.
So what is the highest form in Abulafia tradition?
For him, it was a certain form of union with God by using a series of mystical techniques intended to create a union with the divine.
Is that what's referred to as yichudim?
No, he wouldn't call it yichudim. He would call it simply recitation of divine name, askarot. And in his opinion, someone is able, by combinations of letters, to intensify the intellectual life.
And that is distinct from prayer, meaning askarot is different to what prayer is as we know it
You
today.
would say that prayer is a religious form of life, but inferior to his techniques.
What about Torah study, studying Torah? What is the goal of Torah study?
For him, to study Torah, that's what I'm citing, is to study Torah for Leshem, for the sake of. He would say, for the sake of the divine name. Leshem, for the sake of the divine name. Meaning to transform the Torah in a series of divine names.
Does Jewish mysticism view men and women as different or the same?
Different attitudes to women in Kabbalah. Some of them rather negative, some of them more positive, some of them very positive. So there is no one unified attitude.
The ones that talk about it in a very positive way, how do they explain it?
The most important commandment for the Kabbalist is procreation. And without procreation, there's no way to attain some form of immortality. For this sake, you need a woman. But that's not just some form of subordination. She is conceived on the high, the Shekhinah, to be the queen of the world and to bring everything to the world. So that's not something, how to put it, inferior or instrumental. It is some, according to the Kabbalists, the last Sphira or the Shekhinah is ascending to the Ein Sof, to the infinity, bringing down divine influence or power and distributing it to this world. So she is responsible for this world, and she is responsible for the souls in this world. So according to the Kabbalists, the feminine potency is the most important one for what happens here. So that's a very positive attitude.
Yeah. And should Judaism be hard or easy in the mystical thought? Should it be something difficult and burdensome, or?
Judaism became very difficult for some people and easy for other people. So as a way of life, it was moderate, but when you entered the Orthodox way of life with the study of Talmud for many, many years, it can complicate life in a very clear manner. On the other side, for example, Hasidism, the Jewish life can become a matter of pleasure, of having a delight. So there's no one simple definition. Depends how do you modulate Judaism. So that's not something which is a given and you can consume or not. It is a possibility that you can create out of it something that is different from the starting point.
So according to the mystical school of thought, why did God create the world?
It's a hard question. Most of the cases it is said that God needed some form of recognition, saying that there is no king without
A people to be a king over.
people. So that's a need of God to be recognized. Some others would say God needs you in order to improve you. So there are a variety of answers why he created. In some cases, he created out of necessity, to put it so, the flow overflowing you. And he created out of an inner impulse.
How can human beings go against the will of God? Do we have free will, or do we just do whatever God wants?
Again, there is no one simple answer. Some Kabbalists would say you are free, and some others would say that we are, in a way, premeditated. We must do some things from the very beginning. That is the mission. So their view of the mission, the Jews must spread the divine message, which is found in many cases. But in other cases, the individual can choose, and unfortunately, in most of the cases, the choices are very negative.
What is a Mashiach? What's going to happen when Mashiach, when the Messiah comes in the Kabbalistic tradition?
Depends whom you ask. In some cases, Kabbala accepted the traditional vision of return to the land of Israel, the creation of a temple, and the restoring of the Davidic dynasty. So that's the simple vision of Messianism found long before Kabbala, but also in Kabbala. In other cases, like Maimonides, Messianism is a time of philosophical meditation. For other Kabbalists, the Messianic era can happen anytime for different individuals. So someone can have a redemption and can call himself Messiah, while all the others are still not redeemed. So there's no one simple form of redemption. According to Abu Lafia, we mentioned here, he offered recipes for redemption. If you do it, you are enter the Olam Haba. Every evening you return, and then you're gonna go. So he believes that he has another vision of Messianism.
So he believed you can be in this world, do certain incantations, and then ascend to another world, and then you
Yes,
return to this
and
world
return.
while you're in this world.
Yes.
Did he believe that he could bring the Messianic era? Was that a separate time?
He would believe that for an elite will be a Messianic era, if someone will do his techniques. But I doubt if he believes that all the people are going to be saved, because most of the people are stupid, and that's impossible to save them.
Have you ever tried these incantations and tried to go into
Never.
the Messianic? Have you ever been tempted to?
Not.
No?
I'm curious about what's written in the books, but I never did it.
And what about the state of Israel?
Yeah?
The Medinat Israel, the state of Israel, is that part of the final redemption?
That I don't know. It's for sure a redemption in some ways. And to give you an example, in the last year and a half after 7th of October, I had to speak to some, by Zoom, by some communities in Romania about what happened. And my message was very simple. In one day, in 1941, 15,000 Jews were killed in one city. No one reacted up to today. So that's the difference. The difference is that once, I think about one day, I don't speak about Germans, I don't speak about Holocaust, before the Holocaust, in one day, in the city of Yash, 15,000 Jews were killed in one day, more than all the wars. So for sure it's a redemption from the plight of most of the Jews in Eastern Europe and Central Europe, but also in Western Europe. In France, many people were sent to Auschwitz. In my opinion, it's a redemption also for Jews in Arab countries. So it depends how do you frame redemption. If you frame redemption in a practical way, for sure the state of Israel redeemed many, many people, offering them a superior way of Jewish life.
We live with many challenges in the world. What do you believe is the greatest challenge facing the world today?
To maintain what you have. Meaning the situation in Israel before October 7th was not so bad. To maintain it, it is a challenge. It's also the case with Jews in Western world. Jewish life was not so bad. To maintain it, it's a big challenge.
And how has modernity changed Jewish mysticism?
Modernity was a very, very great challenge because of the secular vision. The Kabbalists didn't, in fact, interact with it and didn't answer it. Kabbalists rather ignored it. For sure, they used the secular tools, printing, TV, but they didn't address deeply the challenges of modernity. They used modernity, but didn't adopt it or challenge it.
What differentiates Jewish mysticism from other mysticisms and other religious traditions?
Jews attempted to intensify Jewish life. So Jews used the commandments as a main tool for having a mystical life by intensification, by performance and intensification. For Abulafia, who didn't use the commandments, he's nevertheless using divine names, which is part of Judaism and part of the cult in the temple. So the Jews were using a variety of Jewish aspects intensified, while other religions are using their, how to put it, way of life to intensify their recitation of divine name also in Hinduism. So that's to use something a given, but in a new way.
Does one need to be religious to study Jewish mysticism?
It must be at least sympathetic with religion, because otherwise you don't understand.
What do you mean?
To understand what is, to give you a simple example, what is the meaning to go to the synagogue? If you never was there, it's very difficult to understand. So to give you an example, there was a conference once in Germany about voice. So I told them, voice, actually in the synagogue there's all the time voice, and that's also in the yeshiva. People are shouting. People were a little bit confused because they didn't understand what is shul.
Yeah.
A shul is for praying and yeshiva is for studying, but nevertheless, there's a lot of voices, and that's an atmosphere of voices. And you feel this atmosphere. If you don't feel it, you don't understand about what's going on. That's what I call sonorous communities. The sonorous. If you don't understand what is sonorous, if you believe that going to the church and everything is silent, it's difficult to understand. People were amazed in Germany. They saw that I'm anti-Semitic. When I told them people are shouting, they were confused. That's an example of if you don't see it or experiencing it, hard to understand.
And can mysticism be dangerous?
For sure, it can be like everything. If you take to extreme, it can be dangerous.
Can you give an example?
If you take the mystical vision of the land of Israel, for example, that's only for the Jews. So the consequence can be very, very dangerous. To give you just one example. Or if you demonize the non-Jews, it can be very dangerous, and so on.
So how has this affected the relationships in your own life? A lot of the Kabbala is about with your students, with your family. How has it affected your own relationships?
My answer is, I hope that no.
You hope no?
Yes.
Why?
Meaning I attempt to judge by myself without using cliches found in Kabbalah.
So you feel a complete separation. This is an academic study, and then
I
you've
don't
got
know
your
if it's complete.
Yeah.
It's not complete because I know all this. To say complete is a little bit exaggerated. But I attempt nevertheless to judge in a more detailed manner without using cliches.
And when you read about character development and these ideas, does it ever, you feel, go inside, or you try to maintain
It depends what and when, and meaning that's no one simple answer. Meaning, when you study just one form of Kabbalah, you believe that is important. But if you study many others, you see that there's a difference, and you shouldn't exaggerate and shouldn't be attracted too much and not reify Jewish mysticism as if it's one attitude.
Do you have a favorite stream of thought that you're most attracted to within mysticism?
I myself know.
And is there one teaching that comes to mind, an idea, a thought that you think is really interesting or powerful for people to hear? Obviously there's many, but does one come to mind?
Yes, but it's too complicated to explain. Meaning, in the cases of Abulafia, he was very Jewish in one way, and he was very open to the others in another way. He was ready to speak with the Pope. The Pope declined, but so that's an example of a Kabbalist who was very Jewish, very anti-rabbinic, and very anti-Christian, and nevertheless ready to speak with them.
How do you explain that?
Because he believes that he is interested only in the elite.
And the Pope was considered elite?
It's for sure an elite.
Even though it's not from the same tradition?
Yes. But an elite can speak with an elite.
And what is it like? Is there any areas of Kabbalah that you think would be most interesting for people today, for the young people?
I don't know. I don't know what's the young people. I don't know. I have children and grandchildren. I don't know if they are going to be interested in Jewish mysticism. I don't recommend it. Meaning that's an unknown for me. To tell you what will be interesting for the next generation or 2 generations later.
Do you remember what it is that made you excited about it? You said that you were curious.
Yes.
What was the part that made you curious?
I was amazed to see so much material that is unknown. And I didn't expect anything, and I was not very much attracted by anything. But the unknown is just the term that may answer your question. Yet I'm curious about what I don't know. Not only in Kabbalah, but Kabbalah for sure, but also in other areas.
It's interesting because Kabbalah is like the study of the unknown.
I study what is unknown at a certain moment and then becomes known, and then you can go on because the material is very, very vast. Even today, after many, many years of studying, there is a lot to be learned more.
What is some of the studies that aren't very known? What are the areas that still people haven't uncovered that you've seen?
To give you an example, Kabbalistic magic, what's called Kabbala Masit. People know there's a lot of material, but didn't enter too much because it was despised. That's something without big ideas, just practice, which people don't believe in it and don't believe that it is helpful. So that's an area that even if you read a lot of Kabbalah, you don't see the Kabbalah Masit studies.
What are the main scholars or sources for the Kabbalah Masit that you've seen?
There's so much that's hard to, in most of the cases, that's anonymous.
Anonymous?
Yes. There are a lot of large manuscripts which, without any author, including vast manuscripts of hundreds of pages which are not printed and not studied, and we don't know who wrote them. And people, even when they mention Kabbalah Masit, the scholars, they didn't peruse it. I don't say they didn't use it, for sure, but didn't peruse it.
It's interesting. Is it because they don't know who the author is, or because there's so much other stuff to study?
Because the study is guided by an assumption that ideas are more important than practice. So you study the 10 Sfirot, and Sof, Tzimtzum, all those issues are as if they are the most important part. But what people did, and Kabbalah Masit has a lot with what people actually did, is secondary, if not to say marginal.
You believe that as well, or that's your belief, or that's the general belief of the academy?
That's my belief. Everyone will subscribe to it, but the problem is, what do you do after you say that is important? It's more important to study them than to say that's important.
Can you share 1 or 2 examples before we finish about a Kabbalah Masit action that someone could do? They create something, they make something, they heal someone. What is an example?
One of the most important figures in Jewish mysticism ever, Israel Baal Shem Tov, was Baal Shem. which means that he was dealing with Kabbala Masid.
The Baal of the Shem means he was not the master of the name of God.
Yes, in principle. What is the name? That's complex. But here we have an example of actually a magician who created a big movement and succeeded. So that's very important to investigate what happened there. What was his magic, how his magic worked, what was the background.
Do you know any examples of different magic things he did?
Sure, there are a lot of, you can use a divine name, you can use angelic names, you can use demonic names, meaning there are a variety of magical recipes, a variety, huge variety. The best used some of them, but other Baalei Shem, there were many others before him, used other. That's a vast area which had an impact on life. It was not studied enough.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think that, at least for me, you've uncovered how exciting and how many different areas there are still to be studied. And you've done such important work in this area that's really laid foundations for generations to come. So may you continue to study, teach, and may many more people follow.
Yeah, for sure. That, to read those manuscripts of Kabbala Masid for 600-700 pages each.
Wow.
You see life there. You see what was their concern.
Yeah.
To have children, to have parnasa, health, how to escape punishment from. In each manuscript you have the life.
So they had a recipe of certain divine names or things to do to be able to achieve sustenance or wealth.
They didn't enter too much in details. But for me, what's important to see there is their problems.
Yeah.
What was the common problem? To have children, to have parnasa.
Nothing's changed.
Health. Not sfirot and so for all this stuff is very important for scholars. But for most of the Jews, the vast majority of the Jews ever, very rare you can find a recipe for remembering, not to forget the study. You can find. But that's a minority.
Wow. Well, that's really what it was, understanding humanity on a broader level.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot to be done, meaning after many decades of studying Kabbalah by many scholars, the field is still open.
wow, that's exciting. Well, thank you for your time, Professor, and looking forward to reading much more of your material.
Thank you.
Thank you.